Today we're building lounges for a pool. Technically these are more of day beds, but they're really easy to build and don't require a lot of tools. We just opened my first hotel right next to Joshua Tree National Park and needed a bunch of pool furniture. If you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you a bit of the construction process for the pool itself. I wanted very simple modern looking platforms for the cushions, and I made everything out of just two materials: thermally treated ash deck boards from Arborwood and pressure treated 4x4s from Home Depot. Arborwood sent me the boards cut to the precise length of 7 feet. So that means the majority of the work for this project is really just pre-drilling the holes to drive the screws through. I made this jig out of a piece of MDF and scrap plywood, and it just keeps my holes in the ends of the boards in consistent locations. Now this thermally treated ash is quite hard, and I'm using stainless steel screws, so I made sure to drill in some little countersink spaces. We got a really good deal on these outdoor cushions, but we don't want them all on the ground. Some of them are okay, but we kind of like varying the landscape around the pool. So I moved these big daybed mattresses out of the way and started laying out the materials, starting with the 3 4x4 posts. This platform will be pretty heavy when it's all done, so I tried to get it in an approximate location. Now I can just line up my pre-drilled deck boards right on top of the 4x4s. I'm using speed squares here to try to make sure everything's at right angles, and I'm just lining the screw holes with approximately the center of the 4x4. So I put in one screw first, then I kind of maneuver things around while I can still kind of, turn the boards against each other. And then I screw another board on the other end temporarily. And all I'm trying to do is get the first board roughly square before I drive in those second screws. And now once I got that square, it'll be pretty fast to lay out these additional deck boards, set some spacers, and just go to town and assemble this thing really fast. I like using paint sticks that are 1/8 of an inch thick for this type of decking. Now we don't get a lot of rain here, so we're not expecting this wood to, swell up when it gets all wet and then swell back down. And thermally treated ash is very dimensionally stable compared to some other softwood deck boards and stuff. So 1/8 inch gaps should be plenty fine. It gets quite hot in the desert, and sure, the stainless steel screws are not that dark in color, but they do conduct heat, because they're metal. So I made sure to countersink a little bit lower, just in case you're lying directly on the deck itself, you don't all of a sudden feel a little bit of hot metal touching your back. I used 14 5.5 inch wide deck boards for the top surface. I didn't want to do the calculation and cut the 4x4 posts ahead of time, so instead I just screwed down the majority of the deck boards, placed the last one without screwing it down, then drew a line with a Sharpie so I know where to cut through the 4x4s with my circular saw, and then finish up the cut with my reciprocating saw. It would have been easier to cut the posts beforehand, but there's just a better chance of, maybe one of the boards a little inconsistent, or you get one of the gaps just a little bit wrong. I like sort of like laying things out and then knowing exactly where the cut needs to be, and I don't know, I just find that process works best for me. For the ends, I need a board that's 4 3/8 inch wide. So these I did have to rip down with my table saw before drilling in the holes and then screwing them to the ends of the 4x4. And this is really where using 4x4s and having a little more width really comes in handy. I've ripped deck boards like this with a circular saw, but it is certainly easier to do on a table saw. So if you don't have one, you can still do the project, but maybe phone a friend and see if they can help you out. This thermally treated ash is quite hard, but very, very dry. So it has sharp edges, but sands relatively easy because if there's not a lot of moisture to gum up the sandpaper. The edges can be sharp, so I just rounded them over with my palm router. And for the majority of the deck boards, I didn't have to do any sanding. They came pretty well sanded and smooth right from Arborwood. But these ones had been riding around the back of my truck and they got a little scuffed up because, there's rocks and stuff back there. So I did have to do a quick sanding. And even though it's a hardwood, sanded super fast at 150 grit. There's one other size board that I had to rip down on the table saw. And that's these boards that go into the side here. And I ripped these to 3 3/8 of an inch. Now you might be thinking, why not 3.5 inches so it's the same height as those 4x4 posts? I want all the weight to be on the 4x4 posts, so that 1/8 of an inch difference will barely be visible. It'll actually create just a nice little shadow line, and it ensures that my contact with the concrete is on these 3 structural members and not weakening screws if one of the Arborwood side panels is hanging down a little bit too much. I really like this edge detail for a few reasons. One, it gives us that sort of waterfall look that keeps the deck from looking just like, a simple block. And two, it adds a place to grip it, so that if you're moving this with just two people, it's doable. If this was all flush to the edges, it would be, you kind of have to pry it up a little bit, put a block under it, and then get your fingers under. And one thing that I've learned about hotels is that when you're hosting a lot of events, you want to keep things flexible and modular. The Arborwood is so dimensionally stable, and it's not as hard to drill through or screw through as Ipe, so construction went really fast on the labor side, and not having to do a lot of sanding was amazing. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the construction of the pool itself, but first, a message from the sponsor of this video. Today's video is sponsored by EcoFlow. I like building stuff, and whenever I'm building stuff, I'm using electricity. EcoFlow's new Ocean Pro allows me to build in remote locations that are, a little too far for extension cords. This system also serves as backup power when the grid goes down. Solar panels are a great first step, but here's the thing. Solar panels alone won't keep your lights on during an outage. That's why I've been looking into home battery systems, and EcoFlow's new Ocean Pro is honestly the most forward-thinking system I've seen. This system gives you real energy independence. It's modular and scalable up to 80 kilowatt hours of battery storage with up to 40 kilowatts of solar-powered backup. And if you ever need it, you can use it with the portable gas generator to improve your resilience even more and hit that full resilience mark. The Ocean Pro can handle up to 24 kilowatts of continuous output, enough to run every appliance in your house, including two 5-ton HVAC systems simultaneously. But the real game changer for me is the EcoFlow app. It uses AI to predict weather and your energy usage to optimize how you use your solar power, reducing your bills automatically and helping you get the most out of your solar setup. It also integrates with smart home devices like Apple Home, Alexa, Google Nest, and your EV charger. So you can actually automate when your appliances run based on your energy costs. Safety is a huge part of the design too. Ocean Pro operates safely from -4 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. It also has fire suppression in every battery pack, and it's IP67 rated, so it can handle floods and heavy rain. And compared to other options like the Tesla Powerwall, the Ocean Pro actually doubles most of the hardware specs on the market right now, while offering a flexible non-Tesla option for those looking for better specs, better backup flexibility, and a better app. So if you're serious about future-proofing your home and taking your energy independence to the next level, check out the EcoFlow Ocean Pro. It's a smart, powerful, and beautiful way to store and use your solar energy intelligently. Click the link in the description to learn more and see how EcoFlow can help you break free from the grid while lowering your bills. Thanks to EcoFlow for sponsoring today's video and helping people build smarter and more resilient homes. Now, I am obviously biased, but I think these came out great. The Arborwood almost looks like an outdoor suitable walnut, and it blends right in with that stucco wall and the color of the mountains. But let's talk a little bit about pool construction itself. This pool is at the hotel that we built. It has 65 rooms and is on 180 acres right next to Joshua Tree National Park here in California. I'll put a link to the Instagram for the hotel in the description below. Commercial pools have a lot more restrictions than residential ones, but they still start with excavation and a whole lot of rebar to reinforce the sprayed in concrete. Setting the rebar, getting it inspected, and laying all the plumbing was the longest single step for this project. And because we're doing modular construction for the cabana around it as well as the pump house for the pool equipment, there was a lot of engineering and architectural coordination to make sure all of our elevations were right and that the pipes would end up in the right places. The modules look like shipping containers, but they're actual custom-built steel framed modules that came in from just outside of Toronto, Canada. We used a 110-ton crane to lift them off of the trucks and then place them onto stem wall foundations. Gunite is basically a sprayed-in concrete. Sometimes people refer to it as shotcrete, but it comes in a concrete truck that's hooked up to a hopper that's then pumped through this hose where the different workers spray it on and then trowel it smooth. I've done a lot of concrete work, but I suck at troweling, so mad respect to these guys. This is one of the steps in pool construction where it happens really fast because there's a lot of workers all at once. So it's sort of like the rebar and laying all the pipes goes slow with just a small team, and then they bring in this big team for the spraying in of the concrete, and then later on for the plastering. We're required to build a 5-foot perimeter wall around the exterior of the pool, and that's just to keep random people from climbing over it and in. We really had to get the distances right between the pool edge and the walls just to make sure that we weren't blocking the views of those mountains, because we really liked the idea that you could swim with the mountains looming right over you and be able to see them at the same time. Next, we started on the terrace garden on the east end of the pool, and we micro-cemented the inside of the cabana. Next came the coping around the edge of the pool, and then now we can do the infill flat work with concrete since the modules are set, and we can make everything have just the right slope for drainage, but still be a consistent walkable surface. There was a gap in our construction plan, however. You see, we couldn't ship the modules with concrete in them, and even if we could, it would be very difficult to predict how that would line up with the surround of the pool. So I had to come in with my team and build out formwork so that we could match the concrete inside the cabana with the concrete outside of it. Our general contractor didn't want to bid on this because he didn't know what shape the modules were going to come in, so me as part of ownership had to kind of take this on. But what we did do is we timed this with other concrete pours on site. You see, concrete trucks come with more than they need because you never want to, be short of it and then have it cure and then have to add a layer that doesn't stick to itself very well. So I built this formwork right before we had a whole bunch of patios to pour, and I knew I could take the leftovers from each one of those trucks and then just wheelbarrow it over and fill in this very small portion. This kind of tactical approach saved us a lot of money throughout the project because we could kind of be opportunistic and take advantage of extra materials that were already paid for. I screwed on this big 2x12 right to the concrete step. That's going to give us alignment with this step up. Now, we didn't want to pour it solid, even though these modules are pretty strong with the steel in them. That would be a pretty thick piece of concrete at almost 9 inches. So what I did was I got a whole bunch of rigid foam from Home Depot, and I kind of built up that area. Rigid foam is really good in compression, even though you can kind of snap it with your hands. But if you pour 4 inches of concrete on top of it, it won't really move down or settle, and it reduces the weight dramatically. I hadn't done this at this scale before. I used foam in some of my DIY projects, but those are so much smaller. So I was a little worried. I had this paranoid feeling that the foam would float up through the concrete. So I used big pan-headed screws to kind of tack it down and hold it to the plywood subfloor. I don't know if this was needed, but I was so anxious I just did it anyways. This area will just have a small amount of people walking on it, so we didn't use full rebar and instead just use wire mesh. You don't want the wire mesh sitting right on the subfloor, so we broke up some Daybeds. Those are those little concrete blocks with wires in them, and you just put them right under the wire mesh and then use the wires to keep it fastened. And this just holds the mesh about 1.5 inches above the foam or above the subfloor. So we got it all wired up in just one evening, and we're able to take advantage of the free concrete. So here's where we kind of ended up after this step. I love the architectural lines, but this is too brutalist even for my very extreme taste. The light and the views were perfect, but we really needed to soften things up and give it that high-end luxury aesthetic. Thankfully, I'm not the only designer on the team. We hired Emmy and Jen from Gray Space to really take this pool to the next level, and they hand-selected all of these rocks and trees and plants to go around the different terraced gardens. And one of the rules we have as a team is that anytime you place a big rock, you have to immediately go stand on it. We had the crane not just for placing rocks, but also for placing some of the heavier trees as well. This is a bird of paradise tree, and it kind of looks like a giant bonsai tree. Emmy placed some Mexican grasses, small cacti, and ocotillo, along with a bunch of other smaller rocks, in that kind of garden space between the edge of the pool deck and the wall. The plastering involved a whole bunch of plasterers. They all were working really fast all at once. We had about 20 different workers on site, and they had to wear these special little slippers so they didn't mess up the plaster as they went. Again, I'm totally biased, but I think the finished product is pretty epic. And good news, the hotel is now open, so you can come check out my craftsmanship, see all the rocks and trees, and hopefully go for a swim. And just look for those links, along with the links to EcoFlow, in the description section below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, thanks. Bye.